Have you ever stood in front of a mirror, not to fix your hair, not to rehearse your smile, but to actually meet yourself, to make eye contact with the person behind the eyes? It's harder than it sounds, isn't it? You see, we pass by mirrors every day, but most of us never really stop. Why? Because the mirror holds more than just our image. It holds our truth, and that's terrifying. We've been taught to treat the mirror like a surface, something flat and silent. A place to check if our collar is straight, our teeth are clean, our smile convincing. But what if I told you that the mirror was never meant to be an accessory of vanity, but a portal, a holy doorway into your own becoming? Think about it. What else in your daily life stares back at you with such raw honesty? What else reflects exactly what you give it? Without editing, without exaggeration, without apology. That glass you glance at in the morning. It's not neutral, it's charged with the energy of memory, identity, and often resistance. You don't just see your face in the mirror, you see yourself in relation to everything you've been through. The childhood that shaped you, the shame that tried to silence you, the love that lifted you, the losses that nearly broke you. And because of that, the mirror doesn't merely reflect, it reveals, it opens. It opens the inner room where your spirit sits quietly, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be called forth, waiting to be spoken to like someone worthy of reverence. So, ask yourself, when was the last time I really looked in the mirror, not to correct, but to connect? Most people glance, they judge, they fix, they adjust, and then they move on because standing still in front of a mirror feels threatening, doesn't it? Why? Because the mirror doesn't lie, and most of us aren't used to unfiltered truth staring back at us. We say we want clarity, but are we prepared for what it shows? That tiredness in your eyes you try to hide with concealer. That's not just fatigue, it's accumulated emotion. That line near your mouth. That's a roadmap of everything you've endured with silence and grace. That body you so often critique, it's the only place your soul has ever lived. Why speak to it like it's a mistake? If you really knew what the mirror was capable of, you'd approach it like an altar. You'd realize it's not made of glass, it's made of invitation. Yes, invitation, because when you stand before it with sincerity, when you begin to speak, not just out of habit, but out of intention, the mirror becomes something more. It stops reflecting and starts responding. Have you ever felt a lump rise in your throat when you try to say something affirming to yourself? You look in and whisper, "I am enough," but it barely comes out. Why? Because the mirror, this sacred threshold, only responds to honesty. It knows when you're faking it, and it will wait, quietly, patiently, for the moment your voice catches up with your truth. And when it does, oh, something breaks open. You begin to feel the trembling, the tears welling up, the heat rising in your chest. That's not embarrassment, that's breakthrough. That's what happens when you stand before a portal and speak like you believe the universe is listening. Because it is. This isn't superstition, it's neurobiology. Speaking out loud while making eye contact with yourself activates your prefrontal cortex, the seat of conscious thought, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. You are literally reshaping how your brain processes identity. The mirror becomes a tool of transformation. In trauma healing, this is called mirroring self-compassion. Therapists use it with clients who carry deep wounds of neglect or shame. Why? Because the act of witnessing yourself, while also offering kindness, begins to rewire the nervous system. The brain starts to associate your reflection not with critique, but with care, with warmth, with safety. But you don't need a therapy office to do this. You need a moment, a willingness, and a mirror. And maybe you're thinking, but I don't know what to say. Start small. Try. You've survived so much, haven't you? I'm proud of you, even if no one else says it. You're not behind, you're rebuilding. I still see the light in your eyes. Let those words live in the air between you and your reflection. Don't rush it. Don't perform it. Just speak, and then watch. Watch how your shoulders drop. Watch how your breath slows. Watch how your eyes soften. That's not coincidence. That's resonance. Your nervous system is responding to your own compassion like it would to a loving parent's voice. Isn't that wild? You're becoming your own safe place, and the mirror, this ancient overlooked portal, is helping you do it. There's a reason sacred rituals across cultures have used mirrors, water, or reflective surfaces. The human soul longs to be seen, not just by others, but by the self. And when the self begins to witness itself with reverence, that's where healing begins. It's not always grand. It doesn't always come with fireworks or angel choirs. Sometimes it's just a quiet moment at the end of a long day, your hand brushing the bathroom counter, your eyes locking with your own in the glass, and the whisper of something sacred rising from your chest. I am still here. I'm not perfect, but I am present. God, if you're listening, meet me here, and maybe, just maybe, you'll feel it, a wave of peace, a flicker of warmth, a deep breath you didn't know you were holding. That's the mirror responding. That's the divine within you whispering back, I've been here all along. So the next time you pass by your reflection, don't just look, step in, speak with trembling truth. Let your words be the offering, and let the mirror show you that it was never about your face. It was always about your soul trying to come home. Because this mirror is not glass, it's a portal, and you are finally ready to walk through it. Your voice, yes, your voice, is not just a sound you make. It's not just air moving through vocal cords. It's not just language or conversation or something you use when you need to be heard. Your voice is a spiritual frequency. It's an instrument of divine technology. When you use it with intention, when you speak from the belly of your truth, something sacred stirs, something ancient listens. But here's the tragedy. Most people don't use their voice with reverence. They use it to repeat old fears, to replay criticism, to echo the noise of a world that's forgotten how to speak from the soul. They speak carelessly, they speak defensively, or worse. They go silent altogether, and silence, the wrong kind of silence, it costs something sacred. Because what if the moment you stopped speaking up for yourself, the heavens paused too? What if the moment you said, I'm fine, when you weren't, the very help you needed stopped mid-flight, waiting for a voice that never arrived? You see, this universe, this orchestrated rhythm of life, it's always listening. But it responds to clarity, it responds to conviction, and most of all, it responds to vibration. That's what your voice is, a vibration of your soul in audible form. Every time you speak a word, it creates a frequency that doesn't just affect your ears. It touches the invisible field around you. It enters the atmosphere and shifts the chemistry of the moment. Have you ever walked into a room where someone just shouted and the air felt tight and heavy? That's not metaphor, that's physics. Sound is vibration. And vibration holds power. So when you speak, especially to yourself, you are either activating alignment with heaven, or you are reinforcing your own limitation. Let that settle. That phrase you whisper every morning, I hate the way I look today. Do you know what that does to your nervous system? It shuts down your sense of safety. It tells your brain we're under attack, even if it's just you attacking you. Now compare that to a different kind of phrase, spoken slowly, intentionally. My body is the living temple of something holy. I honor it today. Feel the difference. That second one doesn't just sound better. It sends a new vibration into your cells, into your mind, into your spiritual environment. It activates alignment. It reminds your body it is safe to be loved. Because the heavens are not separate from your life. They're not floating above you, detached. They are integrated into your now, into your every breath, every beat, every bold or broken word you say. So when you speak with clarity and courage, heaven responds. That prayer you whispered last night when no one else was listening, that wasn't nothing. That wasn't weakness. That was you aligning your voice with heaven's frequency. That was you saying, I may not have it all figured out, but I am choosing to believe that my voice still matters, that I still matter. And yes, sometimes the response doesn't come the way you expected. It doesn't always sound like thunder. It might not be a clear voice from the clouds. Sometimes heaven speaks back through a person, through a sunrise, through a sudden wave of peace in the middle of your panic. Isn't that wild? Sometimes it's not a sound, it's a shift, but the shift always follows the sound. You move heaven when you move your mouth with belief. Have you noticed how many ancient spiritual traditions involve chanting, singing, prayer, and affirmations? That's not random, that's design. That's because the ancients knew what modern science is only beginning to understand. Sound is sacred, and the sound that matters most is the one you own, your voice. You can't outsource this. You can't borrow someone else's faith. You can't hire someone to speak love into your life while you stay silent. You have to speak, even if your voice trembles, even if it cracks halfway through. Even if you cry mid-sentence, you have to speak, because your voice activates your heaven. There's a reason affirmations are powerful, but only when said out loud. Writing them is great, reading them helps. But saying them, that's when the sky parts, because in that moment, you're not just thinking something. You're owning it, you're broadcasting it, you're saying to all forces around you, this is what I agree with now, and that agreement. It changes everything. Say, I deserve peace. I call joy into this day. I forgive myself, because shame no longer has a seat at my table. Say it and mean it. You don't have to yell. You don't have to be poetic. You just have to be true. Your body, your soul, and heaven itself know when your words are authentic. And when they are, the activation begins. Your mood shifts, your thoughts shift, and slowly, your outer world begins to follow. It may not be instant. This isn't a microwave miracle. This is resonant alignment, and alignment builds momentum. The more you speak truth, the more you embody it. The more you embody it, the more it returns to you. Like a boomerang of blessing. But if you stay silent, if you let fear, unworthiness, or doubt hold your tongue hostage, nothing moves, nothing breathes, because heaven respects freedom. It waits for your initiation. Your voice is the key, so why not use it? Why whisper old wounds when you could be announcing new beginnings? Why repeat the lies you've inherited when you could be declaring your own liberation? Say something new. Say it louder than your fear. Say it until your atmosphere shifts and you can feel the echo of heaven clapping back. Yes, yes, that is the truth we've been waiting for. Your voice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be alive, because when your voice rises in truth, the universe cannot help but rise with it. Your voice activates heaven. Speak now. There's a reason you can't hear the whisper of God when your mind is screaming. There's a reason inspiration avoids chaos. The divine, however you define it, does not shout to compete with your clutter. It waits, it lingers, it speaks only when there's room to be heard, and that is what makes the stillness so vital. Stillness isn't laziness, it isn't weakness, it isn't spiritual bypassing, it's sacred preparation, because the divine won't force its way in. It doesn't need to prove anything, it knows its value. You have to get quiet if you want to hear the language of truth. You have to mute the noise, the external and internal, to receive anything real. Why do we think God would barge into our panic attack with a megaphone? Why do we expect clarity to cut through chaos like some kind of emergency alert? It doesn't work like that. The divine voice is not a siren. It's not forceful or frantic. It's subtle, gentle, sure, and in a world full of volume, its softness is what makes it powerful. You ever tried to find your favorite song in the middle of static? You ever tried to tune into a station while driving through mountains, hearing bits and pieces, some of it distorted, some of it beautiful? That's what it feels like trying to hear God while anxiety is running the control panel of your mind. And yet, this is what we all do. We ask for signs while multitasking. We ask for peace while scrolling. We ask for clarity while binging on comparison, fear, doubt, and digital noise. And we wonder why it feels like heaven goes silent. Heaven isn't silent. You're just turned up too loud. Your mind, your environment, your expectations, all of it contributes to the storm. And no wonder you can't hear the still, small voice, because that voice, it doesn't wrestle your attention away. It's not a performance. It's presence. It speaks when you pause. It reveals when you listen. That's why sacred traditions across centuries, monks in monasteries, mystics in deserts, prophets in caves, they all went quiet before revelation came. Because stillness is not passive. Stillness is the activator. Stillness tells God, I'm not here to perform, I'm here to receive. Stillness says, I'm ready. But today, we've mistaken busyness for purpose. We worship movement. We crave noise. We fill the air with things to distract us from ourselves. Why? Because silence is uncomfortable. It forces you to feel. It forces you to face what's unresolved. And it's easier to stay noisy than to be naked with your own soul. But the truth, you will never hear what you truly need while running from the quiet. You won't hear the affirmation that you're enough if you keep rehearsing mental scripts that say you're failing. You won't feel the love you're asking for if you won't slow down long enough to receive it. And you won't get that soul, deep direction you've been begging for if you're not brave enough to shut everything else off. Because here's the secret. You already know the voice of God. You do. You've heard it before. It's the feeling that washes over you in nature. The kind that makes you breathe deeper without even trying. It's the way your chest softens when someone speaks your truth before you could find the words. It's that deep pause in a conversation when nothing is said but everything is understood. It's the space between words. The inhale before the answer, that's where God speaks. But if your inner world is always on loudspeaker, always spinning, always hustling, always comparing, you'll miss it every single time. So what's the noise for you? Maybe it's people pleasing, the way you twist and shift to be everything for everyone, but leave no bandwidth for your own soul. Maybe it's perfectionism, that constant background hum of not enough that drowns out grace. Or maybe it's trauma, a soundtrack that plays automatically, reminding you to stay hypervigilant, stay guarded, stay small, whatever your noise is. You have to learn how to turn it down, not shame it. Not fight it, but gently, compassionately, turn the volume down, one click at a time, because the divine is not going to shout over your fear. It's going to wait for the moment you stop rehearsing your doubt long enough to say, I'm listening now. And then, then you'll feel it. A shift, a knowing, a subtle but powerful wave of truth that doesn't come from outside, but from somewhere beneath your noise, somewhere deeper, a voice that doesn't beg for attention. It simply is, pure, present, unmistakable, but you'll only hear it if you're willing to go beneath the static, into the pause, into the space where nothing else is performing. You might find it in silence. You might find it while washing dishes with no music, just breathe. You might find it in the early hours of the morning, before the phone starts buzzing. You might find it in the mirror, right after you stop criticizing and start asking, God, are you here? And maybe, just maybe, you'll feel something respond. Because when you create space for the sacred fills it. The divine doesn't need to compete for your attention. It's been here all along, but it will never speak over noise. You were never meant to chase your worth like it's lost treasure. You were never meant to earn it, achieve it, win it, or beg for it. Worth is not a prize, it's a birthright. You don't find it, you remember it, and yet, look at the world we live in. Everything seems designed to make you forget. From the moment you could walk, you were handed rules, expectations, conditions: be polite, be quiet, be pleasing, be productive, be better. So you became a version of yourself that could survive the pressure. You started trying, striving, performing. You crafted masks so well they started to feel like skin. You confused success with significance. You learned to trade authenticity for approval. And slowly, almost without noticing, You forgot who you were before all the proving began. Is it any wonder so many of us feel exhausted? Is it any surprise that no matter how much we do, it never feels like enough? Because when your identity is built on trying to earn worth, it becomes a never-ending race with no finish line. One more accomplishment, one more relationship, one more compliment, and maybe, just maybe, you'll finally feel valid, but it never lasts, does it? The applause fades, the high of being needed disappears. And suddenly, you're left chasing the next thing, wondering what's wrong with you. You ask yourself, why don't I feel full? Why am I always waiting for someone else to tell me I matter? Because you don't need to be told. You need to remember that there was a time, before the world gave you mirrors, that you knew you were enough. As a child, you didn't ask if your laughter was acceptable. You didn't need to justify your joy. You didn't look in the mirror to ask if you were worthy of love that day. You just were. That's what remembering worth looks like. It's not about becoming something new. It's about coming home to something ancient. Something buried, something sacred. But to remember worth, you have to unlearn the lies you were taught. Lies like, your value depends on what you produce. You have to look a certain way to be lovable. Your past defines your worth. If people reject you, it must mean something about you. You're too much or not enough. These messages aren't just painful, they're systemic distortions. They are myths built by a world that profits off your insecurity. And the more you buy into them, the further you drift from your core. That core, it was never broken. No matter what you've done, no matter who failed to see you, no matter how long you've been performing to survive, the original you is still there, waiting to be remembered. Psychologists call this inner knowing your core self. It's the part of you that holds clarity, calm, compassion, and courage. It's not something you earn through healing. It's something you rediscover when you remove what never belonged. So how do you remember worth in a world that keeps asking you to prove it? Start with the voice in your head. That voice that says, I'm not good enough. Whose is it really? Is it your own? Or does it sound like a parent who was never satisfied? A teacher who only praised perfection? A society that gave you impossible standards and then blamed you for failing them? Trace that voice back. Pull its roots up from the soil of your soul, and then speak back. Say, you don't belong to me anymore. I remember who I was before you. I am not too much. I am exactly the right amount for my own becoming. Because you don't find worth in external validation. You don't find it in someone finally choosing you. You don't find it when you hit the goal or lose the weight or get the raise. You find it when you stand in the mirror, trembling and tired, and whisper, even if no one claps for me today, I am still enough. And you keep whispering it until the voice inside you stops shaking. That's not delusion, that's reclamation. You're not building confidence out of nothing. You're removing the noise that told you your worth was negotiable, because it isn't. Worth is not seasonal. It doesn't come and go depending on your bank account, your relationship status, your mistakes, your mental health, or your follower count. It is constant, like gravity, like breath, like soul, and you may not always feel it. That's okay. Feeling unworthy doesn't mean you are unworthy. It just means you've been disconnected from truth. Your job is not to feel perfect every day. Your job is to practice remembering, especially on the days you feel furthest from it. And remembering is a practice. It's a choice. It's a discipline of the heart. And sometimes it means saying things that feel awkward or even untrue at first, like, I am not broken. I am in process. I am worthy of kindness, even when I mess up. I do not have to hustle for my humanity. These statements don't just float in the air. They rewrite your neural pathways. That's neuroscience. Speaking truth activates new connections in the brain, especially when said aloud while making eye contact with yourself. Do you see the power in that? Every affirmation is an act of spiritual resistance. Every moment of choosing gentleness over shame is a vote for remembering your divine identity. because this world may never stop trying to make you forget. But your soul will never stop trying to bring you back, and when you stop trying to find your worth out there, when you stop exhausting yourself with fixing and striving and pleasing, when you sit still long enough to feel that small, steady voice rise from your belly, you'll know, you'll remember, you already are. There's this strange narrative in our world, the idea that loving yourself is arrogant, that affirming your worth out loud is somehow shallow, self-centered, or even sinful. As if honoring your own soul is a betrayal of humility, as if declaring that you are good, whole, and worthy is a threat to someone else's value. But let's name this for what it really is, a distortion. Self-affirmation is not selfish. It's not vanity. It's not about puffing yourself up to prove anything. It is spiritual alignment. When you affirm yourself, you are not just talking to your reflection. You are speaking to the divine image in you. You are agreeing with something sacred. You are coming into harmony with the truth that was placed in you long before fear, failure, or the world had a say. You think God makes things unworthy. You think the creator of the universe, who shaped galaxies, split atoms, and carved rivers through canyons, somehow messed up when he made you. You think your voice, your presence, your softness, your strength were accidents. Absolutely not. But here's the thing, the world won't always affirm you. In fact, it often trains you to doubt yourself, to downplay your light, to shrink so others can feel tall. That's why self-affirmation is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Because if you don't learn to speak life into yourself, you'll start to believe the lies others speak over you. You'll start to internalize the criticism, the silence, the indifference. You'll wait for someone to say, "You're enough," when really, it was always meant to come from within. And when it does, when you finally look in the mirror, meet your own eyes and say, "I belong here. I am not a burden. I am not my mistakes. I carry light," that's not arrogance, that's worship. Because every time you affirm your God-given value, you're affirming the one who put it there. This is why the ancient scriptures say, "Let the weak say, I am strong." Not because you're denying your pain, but because your words are an invocation. Your voice becomes a vessel. You're calling forth a deeper reality, one that already exists in the spirit and now needs to be spoken into form. That's the power of self-affirmation. It's not just psychology, it's prophecy. It is the act of speaking now what your future self will thank you for believing today. But let's be real, self-affirmation isn't always easy, especially if you've spent a lifetime receiving the opposite. Maybe you grew up in a home where love had conditions, where affirmation was given only when you achieved something, or worse, not given at all. Maybe you internalized that silence as truth. Maybe somewhere along the line, you started to believe that love had to be earned. So when you stand in front of the mirror now and say, "I am worthy," your voice trembles, your throat tightens, you almost laugh, because it feels like a lie. But that discomfort, that resistance, that's not your spirit rejecting truth. It's your nervous system trying to adjust to new safety. You're not being fake when you say those words, you're being faithful. You're planting a new root in the soil of your soul, even if it hasn't bloomed yet, and science backs this up. Research in neuroplasticity shows that repeating affirmations out loud, especially when paired with emotion and eye contact, creates new neural pathways, new default beliefs, new ways your brain learns to talk to you, not about you. Every time you say, "I am healing," "I am allowed to take up space," "I do not need to earn rest," you are not just making noise, you're making change. This is why affirmations are not weak, they are warfare. Because let's be honest, what's more dangerous to darkness than someone who believes they are loved without needing to prove it? What's more threatening to systems of oppression than someone who refuses to hate themselves, even when they were conditioned to? What's more revolutionary than a woman who no longer apologizes for her presence, a man who reclaims his softness, a soul who stops asking for permission to be alive? This is why affirming yourself is not about ego, it's about identity. You're not saying, "I'm better than everyone." You're saying, I refuse to be beneath anyone. You're reclaiming what was always true. You're practicing love, not just for the world, but for the one soul you're responsible for every single day, your own. And yes, it will feel weird at first. You will feel awkward. The mirror might feel like a stranger, but speak anyway, say it anyway, because with each affirmation, your body learns a new way to feel safe. Your mind rewrites the story, and your spirit stretches into the truth it always knew but was waiting for you to remember. Here's a practice. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you start your routine, stand still. Place a hand over your heart, look at yourself, not at your hair or your weight or your flaws. Look into your own eyes and say something true. I am not who I was, but I am proud of who I'm becoming. My softness is not a weakness, it's a superpower. I trust the timing of my life. Do this for 30 days. Watch what happens. Watch how your posture changes. Watch how your boundaries strengthen. Watch how you stop begging for crumbs because you've started feeding yourself something real. Because at the core, self-affirmation is not about self-importance. It's about self-remembrance. And in remembering your own divinity, you mirror the love of the one who created you. So no, it's not selfish. It's sacred. Speak it. Say it again. Let heaven hear you. Let hell fear you. Let you feel you. Because every time you affirm your soul, something holy agrees and responds. Shame thrives in silence. It feeds on secrecy. It survives in the shadows, where you hide the parts of yourself you've been told are too much, too broken, too ugly, or too hard to love. But the moment you speak that truth out loud, the moment you give language to your pain, to your struggle, to your humanity, shame begins to die. It loses oxygen when exposed to honesty. It starts to suffocate when you stop whispering your fears in isolation and start naming them with courage. Because shame can't live in the same room as truth. It's allergic to it. Shame tells you, if people really knew you, they'd leave. Truth says, if people really knew you, they'd understand you better. Shame says, don't say that, it'll ruin everything. Truth says, say that, and you'll finally breathe. But how many of us stay locked in internal prisons because of this lie? If I speak it, I'll be punished. So we hold it in. We smile when we want to scream. We nod when we want to collapse. We say, I'm okay, when our hearts are shattered in pieces on the inside. We become experts in self-denial, thinking it's noble to suffer in silence. But silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is a slow death. Sometimes silence is trauma wearing politeness as perfume. Shame loves silence because silence creates distortion. It lets your mind replay worst-case scenarios. It lets you believe you're the only one. And isolation, for the soul, is the most dangerous place to live. But here's the miracle. The very act of speaking truth, even when your voice trembles, becomes a sacred act of resistance. It tells your nervous system, we are no longer hiding. It tells your soul, you are safe to exist here. That's why something shifts the moment you say out loud, I'm not okay today. I was hurt more deeply than I've ever admitted. I still carry shame for something I did 10 years ago. I feel unlovable, and I don't know how to stop. I've been pretending, and I'm tired. Those words may sound like weakness to someone who doesn't understand healing, but to anyone who knows the sacred weight of truth, that's strength, that's freedom in progress. Brené Brown's research proves this again and again. Shame needs 3 things to grow: secrecy, silence, and judgment. And when you remove even one, shame starts to unravel. You don't have to scream your truth. You don't have to post it for the world, but you do have to voice it, even if it's only to yourself in the mirror. Even if your voice cracks, even if you're terrified of what comes next, because the moment you name it, you start to own it, and what you own, you can begin to heal. There's a reason why therapists ask you to say it out loud. There's a reason confessions are spoken. There's a reason spiritual traditions across centuries included chanting, prayer, declaration. It's not about spectacle. It's about the spiritual shift that happens when you give breath to truth. Your voice becomes a vehicle for inner liberation. Shame might be loud in your head, but truth is louder when it comes from your mouth. You've been told to get over it, to move on, to stay positive. But how can you move forward if the wound is still infected? How can you reach for love when shame keeps whispering, "You don't deserve it"? You have to tell the truth to yourself, to someone safe, to the mirror, to God. You have to say it. This happened. It hurt. I blamed myself for years, but I'm ready to stop hiding now. That is where healing begins, because shame wants you to think your story disqualifies you. But truth reveals that your story is actually what qualifies you for compassion, connection, and depth. There's nothing more magnetic than someone who has walked through fire, named the flame, and came back with their voice intact. And your voice, that's the very thing shame tries to steal. It convinces you that silence is safety. But it's not. Silence is containment, and healing requires release. You know the moment, the one where your throat tightens, your chest burns, and the words feel too heavy to speak. That's the threshold. That's the shame barrier, and when you cross it, when you speak anyway, something sacred shatters. It might not feel like relief right away. It might feel messy, vulnerable, like standing naked in front of your own pain. But don't confuse discomfort with danger. That discomfort, it's the sound of shackles falling off. You're no longer protecting your pain. You're transforming it. You're no longer hiding what happened. You're rewriting what it means. And the divine, the sacred, God, whatever name you give to love, it leans in close when truth is spoken. It does not turn away from your mess. It doesn't flinch at your story. It says, finally, now we can begin. Because healing doesn't require perfection. It requires permission, and the first permission often comes from your own mouth. You don't have to tell the whole world, but you do have to stop pretending. You do have to let your voice become an ally, not an accuser. Say it, "I've carried shame about this for too long." Say it, "I don't want to hide anymore." Say it, "I'm ready to tell the truth, even if it scares me." And then feel the shift, feel the power return. Feel the lies start to loosen their grip, because shame is like mold. It grows in darkness, but expose it to light and it dries up. It dies, and your voice, that's the light, let it in, speak it out. Because shame can't survive where truth is spoken out loud. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that God only meets us in the spotless parts of ourselves. That before we approach the divine, we have to clean up, get it together, silence our doubts, fix the mess, and come with a polished version of who we are. But that's not truth. That's performance. God is not looking for your perfection. He's asking for your presence. He's not impressed by your masks. He's moved by your honesty. What if you stopped running in circles trying to earn what was already given freely? What if God doesn't need your perfection, your eloquence, your certainty, but your real, raw, trembling yes? Your presence is the portal, your awareness, your open-hearted, unfiltered, "Here I am, God." That is what shifts the room. That's what opens the heavens. That's what allows grace to flood the cracks you've tried so hard to seal on your own. You are never required to be flawless to be found. In fact, all throughout Scripture, story, and soul, God doesn't call the perfect. He calls the present. Think about it. Moses had a stutter. David had blood on his hands. Rahab was a prostitute. Elijah was suicidal. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Mary said, "How can this be?" But they showed up. They didn't bring perfection. They brought presence. God met them in the mess, not beyond it. So, why do we keep trying to bring him only the curated parts of ourselves? Why do we filter our prayers? Why do we edit our journals? Why do we shrink our emotions in worship, as if God can't handle our sadness, our rage, our fatigue? Newsflash, God isn't fragile. You think he doesn't already know what's in your heart. You think he can't feel the war happening inside you. He doesn't need your rehearsed lines. He wants your real tears. He doesn't need your script. He wants your surrender. You could fall to your knees right now, weeping in total incoherence. And God would understand every single sound. He's not asking you to impress him. He's asking you to include him. There's something holy about just showing up, about dragging yourself into the moment. even when you're exhausted, even when you feel undeserving, even when your voice shakes and your hands tremble. That's presence, and that's where power is born, because the lie of perfection keeps you paralyzed. It tells you, don't even try until you've figured it all out. But God says, come to me as you are, bring the mess, bring the wound, bring the questions. And isn't that what intimacy really is? The ability to be seen, not when you're flawless, but when you're fractured. When a child is scared, they don't run to a parent only once they've stopped crying. They run while they're still sobbing. They run while they're still confused, wild, messy. That's the relationship God wants with you. He wants you, not the version of you that earned someone's approval, not the one that learned how to be silent to stay safe, not the one who's hyper-productive to mask insecurity. He wants the present one, the God, I don't know what I'm doing version, the I feel broken and confused version, the I showed up anyway version, because in presence, healing begins. When you are present with God, you begin to trust that you are not abandoned in your weakness, that your flaws are not fatal, that your humanity isn't a hindrance to spirituality. It's the pathway to it. Perfection isolates, but presence connects. Perfection makes you perform, but presence lets you rest. Perfection exhausts, presence revives. God is not an employer watching your performance report. He is a lover watching for your eyes to meet his. He's the father running toward the prodigal, not waiting with arms crossed, tapping his foot in judgment. He doesn't say, where have you been? He says, you're home. And you know what's wild? Sometimes just sitting in stillness is the most sacred act you can offer. Not striving, not fixing, not proving. Just sitting, breathing, listening, saying, I'm here, God. I don't have the words. I don't have the plan, but I showed up. That is sacred. That is spiritual maturity. That is how transformation begins, not in the big moments where everything is resolved, but in the quiet choices where you return to yourself and to the divine. Over and over and over again, you're allowed to be undone. You're allowed to be uncertain. You're allowed to be inconsistent, as long as you stay present, because you'll never feel ready if you're chasing perfection, but you can be available, and availability is what the divine flows through. God doesn't need a perfect vessel. He just needs an open one. He doesn't need you to have a 5-point plan. He just needs your attention, your awareness, your now. Do you feel the shift in your chest when you stop performing and start being? Do you feel the sacred hush when you whisper, here I am, not as an expert, not as a warrior, not as a leader, but just as a child? Do you feel the tenderness that meets you, not when you're killing it, but when you're crawling? That's the divine presence moving toward you in your humanity, not waiting for your perfection, but holding space for your presence. You don't need to clean yourself up before you're loved. You don't need to get it all right before you're held. You don't need to achieve holiness through performance. You only need to return to the moment, to the breath, to the one who says, even now, I am with you. Even now, yes, even in this, even in the doubt, even in the relapse, even in the ache, even in the numbness, even when your prayers feel hollow and your journal stays blank, even when you show up late, messy, ashamed, even then, especially then, because God never asked for your perfection. He asked for your presence, so show up, speak, cry, rest, breathe, and let grace do what only grace can do. The mirror is not just glass. It is altar and battlefield. It is the place where your soul comes face to face with the unfinished business of your becoming. And every single time you return to it, especially after you've fallen, especially when you don't like what you see, you are practicing resurrection. You don't just rise once in your life, you rise again, and again, and again. Every morning you dare to look into the reflection, when your eyes are still swollen from grief, when your heart is still raw from betrayal, when your confidence has been fractured. You are declaring, I still believe there's something sacred in me worth returning to. Isn't that resurrection, when your trauma says stay down, but your spirit says stand up again, when your past tells you you are ruined, but your breath insists you are still here, The mirror becomes more than a physical object. It becomes a spiritual practice, a ritual of self-confrontation and self-reclamation, because you know what's harder than pretending everything's okay, facing yourself on the days when it's not, and choosing love anyway. So why is the mirror so charged with emotion? Because it tells the truth. It doesn't reflect your resume. It doesn't reflect your Instagram filter. It doesn't reflect your followers or your curated identity. It reflects your essence. It shows the parts of you still aching, the parts that have aged, the parts that no longer want to perform, the child that never got heard, the strength that nobody saw, the fear you carry, the fire you're hiding, and that kind of intimacy. It's terrifying because most of us were never taught how to hold eye contact with ourselves without slipping into judgment. We stand there and immediately scan for flaws. We weaponize our own gaze. We don't see a human, we see a project. But resurrection doesn't happen when you fix your appearance. It happens when you reclaim your worth, when you stop waiting for your body to change, or your life to improve, or your wounds to vanish before you honor yourself again. That is holy rebellion. That is soul awakening. When Jesus rose, it wasn't in secret. He presented himself, scars and all. He didn't hide the wound, he revealed it, and the mirror invites you to do the same. To show up wounded but willing, bruised but breathing, cracked but still carrying light. And every time you say, I'm coming back to myself today, you are enacting resurrection in real time. You are looking into your own eyes and saying, I still choose you, even now. And what is that if not sacred? Some mornings it will feel easy. You'll catch a glimpse of your strength and smile. You'll feel your own beauty rise to the surface like something familiar finally coming home. But other days, you will stare into the mirror and see only fatigue, regret, pain, and here's the paradox. Those are the most powerful moments. Because when you meet yourself at your lowest and still speak kindness, that is a spiritual victory no one can measure. That's resurrection on a cellular level. We often think of resurrection as an event, a single miraculous moment, but in truth, it's a process. It's a daily choosing, a quiet, trembling return, a whisper in the mirror that says, I will not abandon you, even when you failed, even when you said the thing you swore you'd never say again, even when you ghosted your own healing, even when you spiraled, even when you fell back into the pattern you worked so hard to break, still, you returned. And that is sacred. Do you realize how much courage it takes to look yourself in the eyes after disappointment? Do you realize how much spiritual strength it takes to see your own reflection without flinching? That is not weakness. That is not narcissism. That is resurrective power. Because when you return to the mirror, you're not just practicing self-love. You're practicing rebirth. You're telling the shame, you don't get to narrate my story today. You're telling the fear you can come along, but you're not steering. You're telling the old identity, I see you, I honor what you taught me, but I am walking forward. And that forward motion, that reclaiming of your gaze, that dignifying of your existence, it ripples through your life, because how you see yourself determines everything. Your relationships, your capacity to receive love, your ability to set boundaries, your capacity for joy, your openness to forgiveness. It all starts with that face in the mirror, that precious face, that holy face, that unfinished, glorious, resilient human face. And if it feels uncomfortable to look for too long, that's okay. You've been taught to look outward for validation for so long that turning inward will feel like rebellion. But keep returning, keep standing there, keep saying, I don't have to be perfect to be valuable. I don't have to be healed to be loved. I don't have to be anyone else to be worthy. And maybe one day, without warning, you'll meet your own eyes and feel peace, not because everything is fixed, but because you are finally home in yourself. That is the quiet miracle. The mirror didn't change, you did. You became someone who shows up with gentleness. You became someone who blesses what you used to curse. You became someone who rises, not once, but daily, and that is resurrection in motion. So the next time you look into the mirror after a breakdown, a relapse, a heartbreak, a spiral. Remember this: you are not starting over, you are resurrecting. You are choosing to live again from the same body that once housed pain. You are declaring, life still moves through me. You are practicing the miracle of returning, and every return is sacred, every return is enough, every return is proof you are still rising.